All of the energy of the last week has been with President-elect Trump, it seems. With appointments for his top team being made daily, he's dropping in on Joe Biden today. By and large, the early appointments have defied the predictions of those who, in the light of Trump's absolute loyalty criteria, rather feared a bunch of wild-eyed MAGA weirdos to be thrown into offices in which they were no way qualified. The appointment of Susie Wiles as Chief of Staff got nods of approval all round in recognition of her quiet competence. The officially acknowledged but not finally confirmed rumours that Marco Rubio would become Secretary of State, and the confirmed pick of Mike Waltz as National Security Advisor likewise got approval. These were people whose political bent was solidly in the camp of Trump, but they are experienced, they are knowledgeable political professionals. But then, by the time of shooting this video, people started to wonder why Rubio hadn't yet actually been formally announced. Trump has been known to change his mind at the last minute on such things, and there is talk of a backlash against his selection. And then we've had several high-profile appointments that have been reported by the more sober news outlets as unconventional. I leave it to you to imagine what the Twitter mob have been saying. Those would be Pete Hegseth, a long-time Fox News host as Trump's Secretary of Defense, and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy as jointly heading up the long-trailed Department of Government Efficiency, which a little while Musk, never one to dodge a stretched target, said could cut $2 trillion of wasteful spending from the government budget. Let's start with the first of those. In recent years, Hegseth has an animated and outspoken Trump advocate on the President-elect's favourite TV channel. It is, to say the least, an unconventional choice. It's worth noting that Hegseth has at least served in the military, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and Guantanamo Bay. He was also a former executive director of Vets for Freedom. That's veterans, of course, not veterinarians, although I expect they're for freedom as well. Plus dogs. But I digress. The thing that seems to have attracted Trump's attention is Hegseth's energetic commentary against wokeism in the military. In his statement, Trump said this: "With Pete at the helm, America's enemies are on notice. Our military will be great again, and America will never back down." But still, you might ask, why not? I mean, if a comedian actor can be elected as the president of Ukraine and then turn into an unexpectedly effective war leader, then why dismiss Hegseth purely on his recent occupation? But there's no doubt that the person in charge of the biggest and most globally active military in the world needs to have probably more focus on operational excellence than merely stripping out the handful of things that Fox News audiences would consider to be woke. This was echoed during the election campaign when Trump called for a purging of the woke generals. Definition to be clarified, I expect. Hegseth will probably be aware of the fact that Trump obviously cares about this position. He did, after all, fire a previous holder of the office, Mark Esper, who provoked Trump's wrath when he disagreed with him publicly about the proposal that the military should be sent to control protests in American cities. Before that, Jim Mattis had resigned as Defense Secretary in 2018, citing differences with the president. Hence why some are saying they fear that the unconventional pick in this case is that loyalty is seen as key more than competence, and certainly don't want any pesky military compunctions about doing whatever the president tells you to do. The Department of Defense is also worried about another aspect. One senior US defense official, speaking anonymously to Reuters, said that there was concern in the Pentagon that Trump would purge career civilian employees. Career civil servants are numbered amongst the 950,000 non-uniformed employees who work in the US military, in many cases having built years of specialised experience. They may end up being targets for Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, which brings us seamlessly to the next announcement. Right now, of course, there is no such thing as a Department of Government Efficiency, so Trump's announcement that the two entrepreneurs would head this up as an advisory process has raised all sorts of questions. Firstly, does anyone, even Elon Musk, seriously believe his previous claims?
How much do you think we can rip out of this wasted $6.5 trillion Harris-Biden budget?
Well, I think we can do at least $2 trillion.
Yeah!
I mean, I think the US budget deficit needs to be brought down. There's undoubtedly lots of waste and bloat that could be cut. But that much? Really? The reality is that cutting the budget that quickly and doing so rapidly would decimate a whole range of government services, including food, healthcare, housing aid, things that will have consequences. The deadline for Musk and Ramaswamy to come back with their conclusions is 4th of July 2026. In other words, in the run-up to the midterm elections. Trump said that a smaller and more efficient government would be a gift to the country on the 250th anniversary of signing the Declaration of Independence. Is it the kind of gift horse that people might look in the mouth? Now, Trump no longer cares, of course, about re-election in this term, because it's his last one, but he probably deeply cares about trying to keep control of the House and Senate for the second half of his tenure. So it's stretching credibility that would be the moment for committing to deep and far-reaching cuts in things that people would seriously notice. I mean, you could make savings in military spending. Not likely, you would have thought, given the peace through strength rhetoric of the last few weeks. Or Social Security, maybe. Again, not likely, given the enormous pushback. I mean, some reduction, sure, just not that much. The truth is that if you don't touch those big departments, then you're talking about cutting the majority of the rest by up to 80%. So gutting agencies that are, for example, responsible for air flight safety and food safety inspections and infrastructure repair and all that non-headline grabbing, not especially prone to wokeness, rather useful stuff. Brian Riedel of the centre-right think tank the Manhattan Institute told the Washington Post, the idea that one can cut $2 trillion in wasteful and unnecessary programs is absolutely absurd. There's a long history of the fantasy that one smart businessman will just identify trillions in waste, but that's just not how it works. Well, that's what he said. For now, the official mood music is more optimistic.
The future is gonna be amazing!
Maybe so. Just don't expect it to be $2 trillion worth of amazing, unless you can look at this graph and work out where that $2 trillion is going to come from. The truth is, it's Congress that approves or not government spending, so any recommendations for cuts that comes from this advisory operation will have to go through the haggling and the mangling machine that is US politicking. It has also raised eyebrows, an understatement, that the two entrepreneurs have been given a role that seems to have such a major conflict of interest built into the brief. Both of them, after all, lead companies that have big government contracts, which probably will not end up the victims of efficiency drives, I'm guessing. There are models for this sort of commission from the past, though. If you could get away from hyperbolic overpromises, there's no doubt that a government efficiency drive would be useful. One forerunner, for example, was the Grace Commission, an advisory body from the Ronald Reagan years. It made recommendations suggesting that $424 billion could be saved in 3 years, and the national debt would rise to only $2.5 trillion by the year 2000. Some of those recommendations were ignored by Congress, some of them were implemented. In the event, the debt in the year 2000 was more than double that projected amount at $5.6 trillion, an indicator perhaps of the gap between the proposals that were politically palatable and those that weren't. Even if the Musk-Ramaswamy version is well executed, which is a question mark for the time being, you can expect that there would be a similar winnowing and negotiating process in the face of realpolitik. So is it a waste of time? Well, again, not if it's well done. Governments that have had years of bureaucratic bloat will often benefit from some incisive and well-informed pushback. Will it match the wild-eyed rhetoric and promises? No, definitely not. Of course not. Estimates from the non-partisan Government Accountability Office suggest that there are possibly tens of billions of potential savings from cutting waste and fraud. You also have to weigh against that Trump's proposals for what could potentially be more than $7 trillion of tax cuts. One reason why no election commentators predicted the US debt burden to do anything but increase whoever won the election. Doesn't mean it's not worth the attempt, so long as you can deal properly with those conflicts of interest issues. Meanwhile, Elon Musk will no doubt be gutted, I tell you, by the news that the UK's left-wing Guardian newspaper is to close its Twitter account in disgust at the US election result. I expect that Musk will be somewhat consoled, however, by the report in the Financial Times that many corporate advertisers who previously fled the increasingly politically lively content on the platform are now looking at returning to it. While The Guardian may be disgusted, other businesses are more interested in how they can curry favour with the modern-day power brokers in Washington. Lou Pascalis, a marketing consultancy chief executive, told the Financial Times that some corporate marketers are now looking to reallocate spending back to Twitter, especially those who might be seeking government contracts. Getting into Elon's good books has suddenly become a priority, it seems. Sounding a bit like an oligarchy, you might say? Well, it's still short of that description, but not so far away, some people are suggesting, at least for as long as Musk holds Trump's favour. And there's an open betting market on how long that's going to be.